Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, friends. What is today? Today is Thursday. Happy Thursday. It has been a while since I've popped on live here. So I think this is my first time coming on live this year. So Happy New Year officially, even though we're already in February, which is crazy. I wanted to come on today, and I'm actually late. I was supposed to come on at 12:30 and that didn't happen. True story, my 2-year-old got into our spice cabinet and dumped out the cumin everywhere and all over the baby, and I still smell like cumin, so that was my fiasco. But I'm here now, and I'm excited to jump on and talk about a topic that really means a lot to me and that I'm hoping we can continue to bring more attention to. And that is all about raising body confident kids. And I think our kids are facing more today than any other generation in terms of dieting messages and a dieting culture and just a really harmful rhetoric that is damaging their body image at younger and younger ages. And, you know, there's so much hyper focus on childhood obesity that I think that a lot of the issues that our kids are really struggling with are going under the radar. And it's really frightening if you look at research and what studies are showing that kids are actually struggling with and dealing with today. And I'm going to get into, of course, you know, ways that we can actually help support our kids and raise a generation of kids that are resilient to these messages and that are confident in their bodies. But before I get into that, I just want to kind of give you a little bit of a background in terms of what our kids are facing today. And I think my computer might be lagging a little bit. So if you are able to jump in live with me, and if you are listening to this, you can put something in the chat box so I know that you're able to hear this, because it seems to be lagging out a little bit. So hopefully this is coming through okay. But let's talk about this. So what are our kids dealing with today, and what are they facing? And I think when we look at the facts, it is really scary to see what our kids are actually dealing with today. And I am going to sneeze. Just kidding. Excuse me. Okay, sorry. So, first of all, like I said, there is such a hyper focus on childhood obesity, but in reality, did you know that more kids are struggling with eating disorders today than type 2 diabetes? So I think when we hear those fear-mongering messages about childhood obesity, type 2 diabetes kind of comes along with that. Like, you know, there's so much fear around our kids being obese because things like diabetes and stuff like that, that a lot of people will say and connect with that message of child obesity. But the reality is that more kids today are actually struggling with eating disorders, not type 2 diabetes. So this should be more of a concern for us as parents, as professionals. You know, our kids are struggling with really dangerous mental illnesses, eating disorders, which stem from, of course, a lot of different factors. But one of the things is that they're hearing these diet messages and dieting rhetorics and messages that are telling them that their bodies are not good enough, that they need to change the way they look to be accepted, to be loved, to be valued. And that is getting into their heads at younger and younger ages. So other research has found that girls as young as 3 years old, that's crazy to me, girls as young as 3 already perceive heaviness as a bad thing and thinness as a good thing. So these body stigmas and the perception of what is a good body versus what is a bad body is already getting in our kids' head as young as the age of 3. Okay, this stat really just breaks my heart, but research has found that more than a third of 5-year-old girls, so it was a study of 5-year-old girls that was done, more than a third of them were restricting their eating in order to stay thin. You guys, that is age 5 years old. That seriously breaks my heart. And if you guys don't know me, I'm sorry I didn't even introduce myself, but my name is Crystal and I am a registered dietitian and I specialize in eating disorders. And I have 5 kids myself, and they range in ages from 1 to 8. And we actually do have a 5-year-old right now. And the thought of her doing this just breaks my heart. But studies, I mean, they're showing these facts. A third of 5-year-old girls are actually intentionally trying to restrict what they eat in order to be thin, or whatever they think is thin in their mind. Other research has found that preschool and elementary age children are more dissatisfied with their bodies now than ever before. And another study found that 1 in 3 high school girls and 1 in 6 high school boys have disordered eating patterns serious enough to warrant medical help. So this is not just something that's affecting our girls. This is absolutely affecting our boys and our sons. So this is a really serious problem. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, we need to do as parents is just realize what we're facing and what our kids are facing, either in our own environment or just in our culture and in the world that they're in. There's so much pressure on kids at younger and younger ages to be in a thinner body. And this is destroying our children. Like, our children are coming up in a world where they are facing pressures that probably a lot of us didn't face to the same degree, which is scary, which is really scary. So it's important to understand kind of the reality of what's happening. And I'm just going to give you five ways that we can help raise a generation of body confident kids. And what does that mean? To me, this means raising kids that are confident in their bodies, no matter what their body looks like, you know, whether they're in a bigger body or a smaller body. It's raising kids who are confident in their natural body and who are not, you know, pressured or falling into pressure to try to change their body to fit the standard that society has put out there, and who are resilient to these messages and not feeling like they have to engage in these really dangerous behaviors like restricting their intake or over-exercising or falling into these disordered eating patterns that can downward cycle into really dangerous eating habits for the rest of their life. So, you know, we have the ability to help our children be resilient and to be confident in their bodies. And I know it can seem kind of cliche because I think these terms are thrown out there, but I think as parents, we have a responsibility and a duty to help our kids more than ever. And so I want to give you 5 tips that we can start doing this in our families and for our kids, because they deserve it. And it is really scary that our children are facing eating disorders at younger and younger ages. And these, like I said, having an eating disorder is something that it's really damaging and destructive, and there are so many consequences associated with an eating disorder, especially when they're happening to our kids at really young ages. So this is really important. Oh, hello. Okay, sorry, my computer is lagging out. So, all right, I think we're back. Okay, so let's talk about the first thing. what is the first thing that we can do to help raise a generation of body confident kids? And that is starting with ourselves and healing our own body image issues. And this is way easier said than done. And I think for a lot of parents, this is kind of a hard one to start with. But we really have to look at ourselves first. We have to look at what is our relationship with our body? What are our own body image issues, and how might these be projecting to our children? Because we can say all the things that we want to our kids, but if we're not walking our talk, then they're going to pick up on that. Our kids are so smart, and they observe behaviors and they mimic behaviors. So if our kids see us being really negative towards ourselves, or if we're engaging in dieting behaviors, or we're talking about ourselves in a negative way in front of our kids, they're absolutely going to pick up on that. So we really do need to start with ourselves and kind of taking an honest look at, how do I feel about my own body? How do I treat my body? How do I engage in behaviors that support my own health and my own body image? And, what kind of message am I sending to my kids? And this is hard. I think as parents, it's easy to be really harsh on ourselves. If you've had a history of disordered eating, or if you've struggled with chronic dieting, then you can likely attest to how difficult it is to break free from these kinds of messages and behaviors. And I am definitely talking as one who understands. So for those of you who maybe don't know my story, but I've shared this pretty openly before, I have struggled with an eating disorder myself and thankfully have recovered. But I do understand how those messages can just get stuck in our brain. And it's time to tell ourselves a different story in order to tell our kids a different story about what it means to take care of our body and what it means to have a positive body image. And for some people, and I think, again, positive, like body positivity is kind of trendy right now. And I think there's a lot of misconception about what that means. And for a lot of people, the thought of being positive or thinking about your body in a positive way can feel really out of reach and overwhelming. And so I always try to say, how can you move the needle from a negative place to even just a more neutral place? So if the thought of feeling positive about your body is just too much to handle, and you just can't fathom being in a place where you can think about yourself or your body in a positive light, think about, how can you move the needle from negativity to neutral? Like, how can you come to a more neutral place about your body if feeling positive about your body is just out of reach? And an important thing to differentiate here is that being positive about your body is really more than just a feeling. And I think that's where people kind of get confused, because it's easy to think, well, I'll just never get to that place where I feel positive about my body. But how we think about our body is more than a feeling. And I kind of explain it like this. I explain it like motherhood, or like being a mom. I think that there's so many times where, as a mom, I love my kids more than anything. Like, that is not a question. I would do anything for my children because I love them so much. That's not questionable, right? But there are definitely days where I don't feel in love with motherhood, because it's hard. Motherhood is hard. And you can talk to any parent and they will tell you that parenting is one of the hardest things that we will do. But if I based how I relate to my kids and how I take care of my kids based on how I feel that day, it just doesn't work that way, right? Because there's some days where I'm like, oh, it feels like Groundhog's Day being a parent sometimes, like doing the same thing over and over again. And, there's days where I wake up and I don't feel like doing all the things. I don't feel like, changing poopy diapers and feeding them and doing all of that. But it's not based on a feeling. It's based on the innate love that I have for them. And I'm going to take care of them and choose to take care of them not based on how I feel that day, but based on, the relationship I have with my kids. And I know it seems kind of cheesy, but I say that our body image and the way we choose to take care of our bodies is kind of the same way. Like, there's a lot of parallel to that. Like, you might wake up and just feel absolutely terrible in your body, or you might not feel great in your body, or you might just be in a place in your life where it's hard for you to accept your body. And I think as moms, we definitely struggle with this through, the different stages of motherhood that we go through. And I think with pregnancy and postpartum, we go through so many shifts in our body. And I think it's expected to realize that we're not always going to like our bodies. But remember, it's not based on a feeling. It's not based on how you feel about your body that day. It's a choice. It's a commitment to care for your body and to do things that are kind to your body, even if you don't feel like taking care of your body, or you don't feel like you're in a place where you can accept your body. And I think if we can model this for our kids, then it demonstrates a whole different message and picture to our children of what it means to be body confident, what it means to have a positive body image. So that's really my first kind of point or tip, is that, it's important to kind of take an honest look at where we're at as parents and what kind of message we are putting out there for our kids about their bodies, because they are going to demonstrate what they see us doing. So we can tell our kids, things all the time. We can tell them that they're beautiful. We can tell them that they're amazing. But if they see us trashing our body or being negative about ourselves or talking about ourselves in a really critical way, they are absolutely going to pick up on that, and they're going to model those types of behaviors. So one thing that I found in my own research was I found a study, and it was a study of 5 to 8-year-old children, which again, this hits so close to home for me because I have a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, and an 8-year-old right now, and they're all girls. We have a younger boy and a girl too. But in this study, it was, again, 5 to 8-year-old children, and they found that among the kids who believed that their mothers were unhappy in their bodies, they were more likely to have a poor body image themselves. So again, studies have found that kids, and this was studied 5 to 8 years old. So if they believed that their moms didn't feel good in their own bodies, they were more likely to have a negative body image themselves. So I hope that makes sense. Hey Liz, thanks for jumping on. It's so good to see you. So that is such a big finding right there, because that goes to show you that, again, we can say all the things that we want to our kids. We can be super positive to them, which those are great things too, but they are more looking at our behaviors. And if our kids believe that we don't feel good in our own bodies, then they're more likely to feel negative about their bodies too. So that's a really important thing to understand, that it truly does start with us as parents. And again, this doesn't mean you have to put on a facade or, feel fake about yourself, but to take the time to heal your own body image if that's something that you're struggling with, and just kind of be honest about your own behaviors and the ways that you think about your body, because our kids are listening and they're watching and they're picking up on the things that we're doing. Okay, so that's the first one. I know that was kind of a long one. And if you are listening and if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments and I will definitely be coming back to answer those. Okay, so second point, recognize that our children are more than their appearances. This is big, and it really has a lot to do with kind of our culture too, because if you think about it, we're so appearance oriented, right? Like, we tend to comment on people's appearances first before anything. So if you see someone you haven't seen for a while, some of the good, some of the things that are really common to say are like, oh, you look so great, or people comment on weight all the time, and it drives me crazy. And especially moms, I feel like as moms, we face this a lot, especially like after we have kids, like, oh, you look so great, you lost all that baby weight, and a lot of this stuff is super harmless. I get that, but what is the message? We are telling our kids that they are worth what their appearance is. So, we're basically surmising that their worth is their appearance. And we have to stop this. We have to stop this as parents, and realize that, and a lot of times too, our kids get this from other people, right? Like, kids are often told things about their appearance from really young ages, like, you're so cute, or you're so, adorable, or you look so beautiful. And it's not that those things are bad, but we have to kind of go beyond that and help our kids recognize that they are more than their looks. Otherwise, they will just continue to believe that their appearance is the most important thing about them. And so if we want to help our children become body confident, we have to help them recognize that their worthiness is not attached to their appearance or their looks whatsoever. And one way I like to do that is, help kind of pull out things about my kids that are not tied to their appearance. And that can be hard to do, again. And I find myself even saying things to my kids about their appearance, sometimes it just comes out, right? Like, you want to say, like, oh, you look so beautiful. I love the way you did your hair. I like the way you dressed today. But try to be intentional about recognizing things and aspects about your children that have absolutely nothing to do with their appearance. It could be qualities that you like about them. It can be personality traits or anything like that we can recognize that has nothing to do with the way they look. I think that's so critical. And I was going to say something. Oh, yeah. Sorry, my brain is going in all these different directions right now. One thing I like to ask my kids, especially when I pick them up from school, because, or later on at dinner, like, one of the questions that I like to ask them is, how are you kind to somebody today? And I think it's a great question to ask because, well, number one, it's open-ended. And number two, it helps them understand that, kindness and being kind toward other people, like, that's a more desirable character trait than the way they look, And another thing is, I think they get this, I think grandparents or like outside relatives are kind of notorious for asking or for saying these types of comments, like, you're so cute, you're so adorable, and also, like, I have 4 girls, and one thing is that they all love, like, the Disney princesses. It's kind of like a girl thing. But I try to help them recognize too, like, we were watching Beauty and the Beast, and my 5-year-old was like, she's just like infatuated with Belle, and like, oh, Belle is so beautiful, and she gets to wear such a beautiful dress, and so one thing I did, like, again, like, these things are not like bad, they're not bad intention, but it's just these messages that our kids pick up from really young ages. So one thing I tried to talk to her about was, well, what are some of the other things about Belle that make her a beautiful person? Like, she's really kind, like, she's kind to her father, she was kind to the Beast, and, she loves to read, and she's really smart and curious about life. So, it ended up being an interesting conversation with my 5-year-old, but I just think it's important that we help our kids understand that there's more to our lives, and there's more to us as a person than just the way that we look. And remember, like, our kids are picking up on these messages from really, really young ages. So the more that we can have these open conversations with them, I think the better. So that is my second point there, recognizing that children are more than their appearances. Okay, number 3, this is a big one too, is celebrating body diversity. this is the hard one, because if you think about, again, our culture and the media that we're saturated in and the types of messages that we are constantly getting, is that, you are only acceptable if your body looks a certain way. And typically that's, thin, like really thin body type. And that is a quote unquote good body to have. And remember the stats that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. And if you missed it, studies have found that girls as young as 3 perceive heaviness as a bad thing and thinness as a good thing. So our kids are already looking at body types in a good versus bad type of thing, when really, there's no such thing as having a bad body type. And I think that's what our kids need to understand, is that bodies come in all different sizes and shapes. There's no such thing as having a bad body, yet there's so much stigma around body types, right? People that are in bigger bodies or heavier bodies tend to be subject to a lot of stigma, and that is really harmful. And so, I try to have those conversations with my kids and really celebrate all different body types and help them recognize that they don't have to look a certain way or have a certain body type in order to do the things that they want to do, or, accomplish the things that they want to do, or to be accepted. I mean, this is a big one where kids, in elementary school, junior high, high school, are under the impression that they have to look a certain way in order to be accepted. So being able to celebrate all body types and realize that, again, there's no way to have a bad body. I'm trying to think of, there was a conversation, I think, where I can't remember with which kid it was, but honestly, I can't remember. But I just remember something came up about fat, I think it was either in a book or something, someone said like, oh, that person is fat. And I think if you can have those conversations with your kids and kind of turn it around in a way of saying, some people are in bigger bodies and some people are in smaller bodies, and it's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong about being in a bigger body. That's just the way that person is. And recognizing that we all come in different shapes and different sizes, and that's okay. That's how God made us. And, having those types of conversations with our kids, because I think there's so much stigma around being in a bigger body. And our kids are coming away with the idea or the message that it's bad to be in a bigger body, which is simply not the case. And if you have multiple kids, I mean, I have 5 children, and they all have different body types. And, how can we expect our kids to fall into one type of body? Like, it's just not realistic. So we need to help them kind of see the diversity of body types that are out there and recognize that body diversity is good, but there's no bad way to have a body. So that's my third point. Point number 4 is keeping our language neutral. And this kind of goes with, some of the earlier points that I was talking about. But again, our kids are listening to what we're saying. And if we are speaking negatively about ourselves, about our bodies, about our kids' bodies, about other people's bodies, our kids are absolutely picking up on those messages. And honestly, there is really no reason why you need to be talking to your child about, their body in terms of like how their body looks or their appearance, because again, it comes back to that thing of reinforcing the idea that their appearance is the most important thing about them. So honestly, just really being aware of your language and how you talk about, how do you talk about bodies? How do you talk about your body? What are the type of words that you use? And sometimes it's easy for that inner critic to come out in the way that we talk to our kids and the way that we talk about other people's bodies. So really watching your language and being aware of the words that you're using is super important. If you have nothing good to say about yourself or your body, then don't say anything. You know, I know sometimes this is really hard for parents, and they can say like, well, I don't know what positive things to say about my body. And if you're not in a place where you can say anything positive about your body, it's okay to say nothing, you know, and talk about other things with your kids, because they are absolutely attaching themselves to our vocabulary around bodies. They do. They really do. And on this point too, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I know a lot of this stuff is easier said than done, but here's the thing. Our kids, you know, they are hearing the things that we say. They're hearing how we talk about ourselves. They're hearing how we talk about our bodies. And sometimes it's really not enough to just, you know, refrain from talking about ourselves in a negative way, if that makes sense. Like, when was the last time that you said something positive about your body in front of your kids? You know, like, think about that. When is the last time that you actually said something positive about your body in front of your kids so that they could hear you? Sometimes I think we think more about what not to say, but we don't think about what we could say in front of our kids for them to hear that we appreciate our bodies and that we care about our bodies. I was working with a client, and I remember her saying something to me that really stuck with me. And she said, I never remember my mom saying anything positive about her body. And it was so interesting to me, because it wasn't that she remembered her mom saying anything negative about her body. It was that she didn't remember her mom saying anything positive about her body. And I just thought that was such an interesting perspective, because sometimes it's not enough just to like refrain from saying negative things. Sometimes we need to be intentional about really celebrating our own bodies in front of our kids. One thing I like to tell my kids is that mommy is strong, you know, and I like to show them my belly, because I have a postpartum belly that has changed a lot after having 5 babies. And it took me a long time, but I am finally in a place where I feel like I am very proud of my body and all that it did to bring 5 amazing kids into the world. And I remember, I can't remember which kid, honestly, but one of them said something like, Mommy, why is your belly so squishy or like wrinkly or something? And it was like I had to seize the opportunity and really just use that as a way to celebrate with them my own body. And I think this is the kind of things that our kids need to hear us say, you know, where that can be a situation where our initial reaction might be like automatic shame, you know, like, oh, my stomach like looks terrible, or even my kids are noticing. But my daughter wasn't asking that question like in a negative way. Like, she just was, it was more out of curiosity. And I really just had to take that opportunity to kind of step back and be able to talk to her and tell her, you know, mommy's body had to change in order to have you and your sisters and your brother. And I'm proud, mommy is proud that my body could do that so that I could have you, because I can't imagine my life without you. And, you know, really taking that opportunity to celebrate my body in front of her. And I think sometimes that's what's missing, is that our kids don't hear us talking about our bodies in a positive way. And again, it goes beyond appearance. You know, it really goes more about what does our body allow us to do, you know, like helping them remember, like, our bodies are strong. Our bodies can carry, like, mommy is strong and I can carry you, or I can run with you and I can play with you. And I'm so glad that my body can do that. And sometimes I think as parents, when we can simplify it like that, it really does help us kind of move the needle from a negative place to a more neutral place. And this is really important if you are personally struggling with negative body image, you know, like kind of looking at yourself through the lens of your children. How do they look at you? And realizing, like, our kids don't look at us as a number on the scale or what size our clothes are. Like, they look at us as so much more than that. And so sometimes we kind of have to step back so we can see the forest through the trees and really remind ourselves of what our body is capable of and what it has done for us throughout our lives, and being able to celebrate that in front of our children so they can see us talking about our body in a positive light. Okay, that was a lot. So let me go to our last point here. And I'll just summarize this quickly because this could be a whole other video in itself. But the last point here is practicing intuitive eating to honor our bodies. So if you're not familiar with intuitive eating, I have a ton of articles and blogs on my site, and I will link to some in the comments below. But our kids are so used to hearing things talked about in a good or bad framework, right? Like, bodies are good or bodies are bad, or food is good. Like, there's certain food that's good and there's certain food that's bad. Like, you shouldn't eat it. But any type of extreme like that is not good. And it actually creates more harm for us in the long run with our eating habits and the way that we treat and care for our body. So being able to practice intuitive eating, which really goes back to basics and goes back to the understanding that our body is really the best guide of what we need, not a diet, not dieting rules. All of that stuff is garbage, and it doesn't help us honor and take care of our body. So if you truly want to get to a place where you can honor your body and you can take care of your body, intuitive eating goes hand in hand with that. Those things are so closely connected. So again, that's kind of a whole nother topic. And if you're interested in learning more about what intuitive eating is and what it looks like and how you can get to a place of truly becoming an intuitive eater, please let me know. I'd love to send you some more articles, or feel free to ask any questions in the comments of this video. So I am going to quickly put a link to a blog here in the comments. So if this topic resonated with you at all, I would love for you to check out the blog that I wrote about it, where I kind of expand in these areas a little bit more. So it's 5 powerful ways to raise a generation of body confident kids. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, as parents, we want nothing more than our kids to be confident in themselves and to grow up in freedom from all the messages that tell them that they have to change who they are to be accepted or to be loved. Like, there is so much more to life. And I think as parents, we all want that for our kids at the end of the day. So if this topic has resonated with you, I would love for you to check out the blog here in the comments, and feel free to leave any questions in here or message me directly. I would love to help you kind of navigate this if this is something that you're struggling with, or if you're starting to see things in your own kids that make you concerned about how they're feeling in their own bodies. Because I think as parents and as moms especially, we do have so much potential to help our children grow in confidence and in freedom to be who they are. So I hope that encourages you a little bit today. So if you were able to jump on and watch, thank you so much for being here. And I'm hoping to start coming on more regularly. So if you have any topics you'd like to see me cover, please be sure to share them. I would love to help answer anything that you're going through. So, all right, thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys.